everyone, this is Crystal and welcome back to my Organize With Me series. Today I am tackling 6x6 papers. So this is how my 6x6 papers are currently in my stash. I have two of these little plastic baskets. These were in the Target dollar spot several years back. And that is how I store them. Of course, there is, as always in my stash room, an overflow of things that have not been organized into these baskets. So sometime last year, I believe, I went through and purged quite a bit of my 6x6 paper stash and then tried to create a kind of organizational system that I thought would work for me. Since then, it has not worked real well. I really haven't used many of my 6x6 papers, and in fact it's something I do struggle to use a little bit unless it's a paper pad that is currently stored with a collection and I'm using it as a collection, but it's not something that I reach for very often, and I don't know if it's something I will reach for in the future or if it's just something I need to let go of. That's something I'm going to need to think about as I look through what I have here. But I also wanted to show you when I went through and organized and purged sometime last year, I did come up with a huge pile of 6x6 papers that I didn't want to keep, and I still have those. They are still hanging out in my stash. They were in a separate box. I'm going to show you them because they will go into the destash boxes that I'm putting together. So let me push this aside and grab the other pile. So here is the pile of 6x6 papers that I have already purged from my stash. You can see there are quite a few that haven't even been opened. So what happened was when I first started scrapbooking kind of in earnest, when I started considering it my main hobby, I guess, I was doing primarily project life, and so I would buy very few 12x12 papers. For one thing, it was more expensive to have 12x12 papers shipped, and I didn't have a local scrapbooking store at the time. I still don't, actually. But it was much cheaper to have 6x6 papers shipped, and since I was only doing pockets, 6x6 papers actually worked better for me. So I bought almost exclusively 6x6 papers at the time. However, I ended up using a lot more cards than papers in my crafting, so I didn't end up using nearly the number of 6x6 papers that I thought I would. So I ended up with just this humongous stash, and it's not something that I buy a lot now. I would say maybe more recently, if I saw a paper pad at like a Tuesday morning, I would pick it up. Maybe, you know, last year I would have done that. We don't have a Tuesday morning very close to us, so it takes, you know, me traveling quite a bit to get to one. It's not something I anticipate doing again, especially considering our current status, and plus it's not something that encourages my desire to reduce my stash. So I'm trying to break that habit, I guess, and stop purchasing things just because I can. Okay, so these are all going into my destash bin. You can see there are lots of really cute ones in here. They're just ones I'm not going to use. And I'm left with all of this to deal with now. So the system that I had started a year ago was dividing them up, first of all, by a few different categories, kind of like I do my project life cards, and I just used these Post-it notes to kind of mark where the different categories were in this container to start. My intention was to go back and create more permanent dividers. So I have maps, book pages, wood grain, florals, lined grid, and ledger. I'm sure there are other ones in here that have fallen down. And then, yeah, see, this in the back I think is not organized at all. It's gotten a bit out of control, this system. And then this side was supposed to be Roy G. Biv, so color in color order. And then of course in the back, again, there are a bunch of pads that have just been stuck in here, and loose papers as well. If I'm going to continue to keep these, then that is certainly how I think I would continue to store them. So it would be very much the same as my Project Life cards, my 4x6 and 3x4 cards. But before I do that, I really need to go through and get rid of a lot more of this. There's literally zero chance of me using all of this. And I would really like to get down to one of these baskets instead of two, which scares me a little bit because that's a lot of paper to get rid of. And I think that if I just went through and chose the ones I really loved, there would be more than one basket full. So I maybe should have said too that I did take them apart. So they come in pads like this and or like this, and I took them all apart out of their pads so that I could organize them by color or by design, because I just wasn't reaching for an entire collection anymore. Like I said, I have all of the collections that I'm working from as collections stored elsewhere. This is just what's kind of left over, or what doesn't have other stuff to go with it. I probably should have said that at the beginning, but anyway. So this is where I'm at. I think what I need to do is just kind of look through what's here and see how much of this I'm willing to let go of, and then reevaluate from there. So that's what I'm gonna do. Just very quickly, I'll show you how I flip through and make really just two piles, keep or get rid of, and then I'll come back on and we can talk about what to do from there. So I've sped this portion of the video up quite a bit, just because if I hadn't, you would have been watching me sort papers for half an hour or so, and I don't think any of you want to see that. But I did keep all of this in the video, just because I wanted you to see my process. I wanted you to see me make decisions and talk to you about why I've made the decisions I have. So I'm going through rather quickly. I'm not focusing on any one paper. I'm just asking myself, do I love it? Will I use it? And then moving on, trying not to spend too much time deliberating on any one of these papers, or it would just take me all day. And I need to make just those gut reaction decisions in order to really get this pile of papers down to a much more reasonable size. So as I'm looking through them, I'm thinking about how I will potentially use these papers in the future. And of course, some of them will be used for Project Life. I can see myself, now that I know what's here and I'm more familiar with what I have, grabbing some of these and using them in my pockets. I think they work wonderful for that still. It was just a matter of not remembering to reach for them. I know a lot of people like to create kits using them, which I did in the past, but I then would never use the kits. So as much as I love kits when it comes to scrapbooking, generally when it's Project Life, I tend to gravitate more towards using cards. So it will take a conscious effort for me to grab these instead and choose to actually create a spread using just 6x6 papers, which I think is totally possible and something I definitely want to do in the future. So I'm keeping that in mind as I'm looking through them. Some of the ones that I think would be really good for Project Life definitely end up in my keep pile. I'm also thinking about a couple other projects that I have in mind. So I have an idea for a project that involves a lot of the sort of vintagey looking florals that I know I have in these piles. So I'm keeping a lot of those, hoping to get to that project in the near future. And then I'm also thinking about cards, because I've been spending lots and lots of time lately creating cards and really enjoying that process. So I'm thinking that a lot of, especially the kind of basic patterns, the more solid colored papers that are dot or grid or lined, that they would work really well as bases for cards. So I'm keeping lots of those, trying to keep some in each color just so I have lots of options. And then hopefully I can get some of those used up in my card making processes as well. So I'm not going to tell you that this was easy. It was not easy, but it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. I really didn't think I would be able to get rid of as much as I did, as easily as I did. But once I started looking through things, a lot of them are just not my style anymore, or they are so basic of a style that it's not something that I would ever remember to grab. And if that was the case, then it went in the giveaway pile or in the destash pile, because if I'm not even attracted to it enough to want to use it right now in a project, then it's never going to be something that I go to my stash to grab. That's not saying that I don't like a lot of these patterns that I'm putting in the destash pile. I certainly do. Some of them were really hard to let go of, but I knew if I kept them, I would just be keeping them because I like to look at them. And I don't have the luxury, I don't have the time or the space to have things in my stash that are just pretty to look at, but are not things that I would actually use in projects. So trying to keep that in mind. And this is definitely something I have to keep in mind in the future when it comes to purchasing product. I think I was way too loose with my purchasing in the past, and made the mistake of buying lots of things that I really liked the look of, or maybe got a really good deal on, but just wouldn't necessarily use. I know my style now, and there was certainly a time when I didn't, when I was experimenting more, and a lot of this comes from that time, and that's totally fine. You're going to buy things that aren't necessarily the kinds of things that you will end up using in the future when you're just figuring out what your style is. But now that I pretty much know what I gravitate towards, it's much easier to let go of those things that just don't fit that style profile. And that's not to say that that style won't change, because it will. We all evolve. Our styles all change as we grow and get better and kind of refine what we do as our lifestyles change, as our tastes change. But they will always make new products, and I'm always going to want to continue to buy those new products. So I can let go of these things now, knowing without a doubt that there will be more products in the future to replace them. So that is certainly something that helped me along as I was deciding to let go of some of the things that were maybe a little bit harder to let go of. But in the end, the fact that I have narrowed down my stash as much as I have, and when I look at that huge pile of things that are going to end up in those destash boxes, it is incredibly motivating, because I know it's going to be easier for me to create. I'm going to be able to find the things that I'm looking for much more quickly, and I'm going to actually use the things that I have, feel good about using those things, and not having this overwhelming stash kind of weighing on my shoulders, like the guilt of buying things that I'm not using, and of hoarding things that aren't getting used quickly enough. That's going to be gone, and I'm going to just hopefully feel much freer and much more able to create. And I think it's really going to help my creativity as well. Okay, so I think that I am nearly done here. I have a few more papers to go through. These are the ones that I had already organized, so you can see they are kind of in themes. This is the floral pile of papers, and I think I just went through the wood grains. I kept a lot of the wood grains because I feel like those will work really well for cards in the future. Some of them were really hard to get rid of, like those Kelly Purkey. Did you notice the Kelly Purkey Mon Ami papers? I have a few that I have been hoarding, but they are at the point now that they're just not my style anymore, and I had to let them go. So some lucky person is going to get those in the destash boxes, and I hope that you will enjoy them more than I have in the last few years that I've been hoarding them. But okay, I'm nearly done. I'm going to come back on and just show you what I have left and talk to you a little bit about what my next step is. You may have noticed at the beginning of this video, this is just part 1. So I decided to break up the 6x6 and 6x8 pattern or paper organization into 2 different videos, just because the length was just getting super long. So I'm going to close out here, and then I'll have another video up tomorrow where I do this exact same thing with all of my 6x8 papers. That one is much shorter. 6x8 papers haven't been around as long as 6x6 papers, so it doesn't take me nearly as long to go through my much smaller stash. But I did want to show you that process. So that will be coming up tomorrow. I am going to come back on here and talk to you about what I have left. Okay, so that worked. I was able to get my stash down to a single one of these baskets. And look at this. I basically doubled the pile of 6x6 papers to add to my D-stash. So let me move all of these little Post-its to the side. Remember, this is the original pile I had, and then this is the new one. It is almost as tall. So yeah, all of this is going. This will be added to the D-stash boxes that I hope to have available by the end of this month, if not sooner. I'm trying to work through all of this organization stuff pretty quickly because I am running out of time. So yeah, so all of this will be added to the D-stash boxes. This little basket is all that I am keeping. So this bin is going to become my 6x8 paper storage. Right now, my 6x8 paper storage is in a matching kind of little file folder thing along with some other stuff. I want to deal with this and move it into this bin instead. So I just have these two as my smaller papers, but I will save that for another video. I think this one is long enough. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you were able to get some inspiration for organizing your own 6x6 papers. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments below and I will definitely get back to you. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really does mean a lot to me and helps me with the content for this channel. So thank you all again for tuning in, and I will see you back here soon.